My parents and brother conspired to ruin my life by getting me expelled from Stanford, and now they want back in after he died. I'm 26, male now, but I was 19 when this went down. There's some seriously messed up family drama here, so buckle up. Growing up, it was always me and my younger brother. Our family looked normal from the outside, middle class, nice enough house in the suburbs, family dinners, all that stuff. But man, the dynamics were so screwed up. My brother was always, and I mean always, the golden child, to a point where it was actually ridiculous. I don't want to sound like I'm bragging, but I was a pretty good student. A 4.0 GPA, started a tutoring program for kids at the local community center, was captain of the debate team, and did all the right stuff you're supposed to do. Meanwhile, my brother barely kept a 3.4 GPA, spent most of his time organizing parties and playing video games, but somehow, in my parents' eyes, he was this misunderstood genius who just learned differently or whatever nonsense they'd say. Here's a quick example of how bad it was. When I got straight A's one semester in high school, my mom just nodded and said, "That's expected of you." That same week, my brother got a B- in English, and they took him out to his favorite steakhouse to celebrate his improvement. I wish I was making this up. So, anyway, fast forward to college applications. I applied to Stanford. It was my dream school since I was a kid. I had the grades, the extracurriculars, and decent SAT scores, 1,540. I studied my a-hole off for months. My brother decided he wanted to go there too, mainly because our dad went there, and he had this whole thing about continuing the legacy or whatever. Here's where everything started going to love. I got my acceptance letter first. I still remember that day. I was in the kitchen eating leftover pizza when the email notification popped up on my phone. I literally started shaking when I read it, and called my best friend right away because I knew my family wouldn't care much. Sure enough, when I told them at dinner, they just went, "Oh, that's nice," and immediately started talking about how they were sure my brother would get in too. Speaking of my brother's application. Okay, this still pisses me off. He barely studied for his SATs, got a 1,290, and his essay was this nonsense story about how organizing house parties taught him leadership skills or something. I actually tried to help him study, stayed up late explaining math problems, helped him with practice tests, the whole thing. But he'd always quit after like 20 minutes, saying stuff like, "Not everyone needs to be a try-hard nerd like you," and go back to playing Call of Duty. Then came the day his rejection letter arrived. Holy love, you'd think somebody died. He came home from checking the mail and literally threw himself on the kitchen floor, crying. He was 21, by the way, not 12. Mom and Dad came running like he was having a heart attack. Meanwhile, my Stanford acceptance letter was still on the fridge, buried under takeout menus and my brother's old soccer team photo. The next few weeks were unbearable. My brother locked himself in his room most of the time, only coming out to make these dramatic sighs and give me dirty looks. My parents started acting weird too, making comments about how some people get all the luck, or how life isn't fair to everyone. Like, I worked my a-hole off for years, while he coasted by on charm and nonsense. But somehow, I was the lucky one. The real kicker. My brother had been telling everyone, like extended family, his friends, random people at the grocery store, that Stanford was his destiny because of our dad. He even had a Stanford sticker on his car already. Embarrassing. So, when he got rejected, instead of admitting that maybe he should have worked harder, he started spreading this story about how I must have done something shady to get in. At first, it was just him telling people I probably cheated on my SATs, or that I knew someone in admissions, but it got worse. Way worse. Looking back now, I can see how this was just the start of his crazy plan to screw me over. I didn't know it then, but this rejection thing broke something in my brother's brain, like he couldn't handle the fact that his destiny didn't work out, and instead of dealing with it like a normal person, he decided that if he couldn't go to Stanford, neither could I. So, picking up where I left off, I got to Stanford, and honestly, the first few months were amazing. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could just be myself without my brother's shadow hanging over me. I got super lucky with my roommate situation too. I ended up with this dude, Jake, from Portland, who was also into computer science and didn't make me feel like a weirdo for actually enjoying studying. Looking at you, high school. Our dorm room was in this older building, nothing fancy, but it had these huge windows and was close to the dining hall. Jake and I set up our desks facing each other, and would do these late-night coding sessions fueled by Red Bull and those cheap Walmart cookies. We had this whole system worked out. The door was usually open when we were there because we had study groups come through a lot, but we had this rule about closing it after 11 p.m., so we could actually get some sleep. Life was actually going pretty great. I was maintaining a 3.9 GPA. Love linear algebra messed up my 4.0, but whatever. I had joined the robotics club, and was working on this cool AI project that was catching some attention. There was this Google recruiter who'd been sniffing around our department, And my professor hinted that I might be in the running for a summer internship. For once, everything was falling into place. Then the weird stuff started happening. It was little things at first, like I'd be in the dining hall and notice people looking at me and whispering. Or someone would move to a different table when I sat down. I figured maybe I had bad BO or something, lol. But then this guy from my calculus class, who I'd never even talked to before, comes up to me after class asking if I could hook him up. I was like, hook you up with what? The homework answers? He just gave me this weird look and walked away. About a week later, my RA, Sarah, pulled me aside after a hall meeting. She was trying to be all casual about it but said there were some concerns about my activities. I had no clue what she was talking about until she straight up asked me if I was selling Adderall to other students. I literally laughed because I thought she was joking. I don't even take Tylenol for headaches, let alone deal drugs. That's when she showed me the screenshots. Someone had been DMing random Stanford students on Instagram, pretending to be me, offering to sell them study drugs. The messages were written in this weird way that kind of sounded like me, used some specific phrases I use, but definitely weren't from me. There were even fake conversations where I supposedly confessed to stealing my brother's research project to get accepted. I knew immediately it was my brother. He'd been stalking my social media, found this out later from his ex, studying how I wrote and then making these elaborate fake conversations. The research project thing was especially rich, considering this dude once asked me if Python was like, about snakes and stuff. But it got worse. Way worse. Jake and I had this routine where we'd hit the 24-hour library together to study, but this one night during midterms week, I had the worst migraine of my life, like seeing spots, going to throw up, the whole deal. Jake practically ordered me to stay in bed and recover, said he'd share his notes with me later. The next morning, I dragged myself to my 8 a.m. class, because I'm an idiot who scheduled an 8 a.m. class, and there are campus police officers waiting at my door. Turns out, someone had anonymously reported that I was dealing drugs out of my dorm room. They searched the place and found a shoebox full of weed and unlabeled pills under my bed, right where I kept my spare textbooks. Here's the thing, only 3 people knew about that spot, me, Jake, and my brother. He'd helped me move in, complaining the whole time about how my dorm was nicer than his room at the community college he ended up at. I remember specifically showing him where I was storing my extra books because he made some joke about hiding snacks from our mom there when she visited. I was freaking out, trying to explain that the drugs weren't mine, but then 3 students came forward saying they'd bought Adderall from me. Found out later my brother had paid them with his entire savings from his Subway job. Like, imagine being so petty you spend your whole summer's worth of sandwich making money just to screw over your brother. The really love up part, the day the police came, my parents were already planning to drive up to campus. They showed up right as I was trying to explain everything to the officers. Instead of defending me or asking questions or anything a normal parent would do, my dad just stood there texting someone with this weird little smile on his face. I later saw in our phone bill that he'd been texting my brother that whole time. Looking back, I can see how perfectly orchestrated it all was. My brother knew exactly when I'd be vulnerable, during midterms, knew about the spot in my room, and had spent months building up this fake drug dealer narrative. He even timed it so our parents would be there to witness my humiliation. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with the dean, the disciplinary board, and campus police. Jake tried to defend me, told them how I was literally the most straight-edged person he knew, wouldn't even drink coffee because I was weird about putting substances in my body. My professors wrote letters about my character, didn't matter, they had evidence and witnesses, and that was that. Okay, so this is where everything really went to complete love. Fair warning, this part still makes my blood boil when I think about it, even 7 years later. The university investigation was a total joke. They found the drugs in my room, which I'm still 100% sure my brother planted, had these 3 random students claiming I sold them Adderall, found out way later my brother paid them $500 each from his Subway savings, and then there were all these screenshots of me messaging people about drugs on Instagram. I tried everything to prove my innocence. Like, I literally offered to take a drug test on the spot, showed them my bank accounts to prove I hadn't been getting any mysterious payments. Hell, I even had my high school teachers write letters about how I was this straight-edge kid who reported someone for having cigarettes, once. Not my purest moment, but you get the point. The disciplinary hearing was on a Tuesday morning. I remember because I was supposed to present my AI project to this Google recruiter on Wednesday. Had been working on it for months. The hearing was in this stuffy room in the admin building. It felt like I was on trial for murder or something. The board was 6 people sitting at this long table, looking at me like I was El Chapo Jr. My parents were there, which somehow made it worse. Mom kept doing this fake crying thing, no actual tears, just weird sniffling noises, and Dad spent the whole time texting. Later found out from my phone bill that he was giving my brother live updates. Like, who does that to their own kid? The worst part was when they brought in the witnesses. These 3 guys I barely knew from my dorm building claimed I'd been selling them Adderall since the first week of school. They had this whole story about how I'd meet them behind the library at specific times, had special prices for bulk orders, all this detailed nonsense that made me sound like some kind of professional drug dealer. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking about how I literally had to Google what Adderall was when my RA first accused me. Jake tried to defend me. He got up there and told them how I was probably the most boring roommate ever, wouldn't even drink energy drinks during all-nighters because I was paranoid about artificial sweeteners, told them about our open-door policy and how anyone could have accessed our room, even mentioned how my grades were perfect and I was in line for that Google internship. So why would I risk everything to sell drugs? But none of it mattered. They had their evidence, and their minds were made up. The dean, this guy with the most punchable face I've ever seen, read out this long statement about how Stanford has a zero-tolerance policy for drug distribution and how they had to maintain the integrity of the institution or whatever. The expulsion letter was like 3 pages long, but I only remember the first line. Effective immediately, your enrollment at Stanford University is terminated. Just like that, everything I'd worked for my entire life was gone. They gave me 48 hours to clear out my dorm room. Packing up my stuff was surreal. Like one minute I'm this promising CS student with a potential Google internship. The next, I'm shoving all my dreams into cardboard boxes, while people whisper in the hallway. Some a-hole even took Snapchat videos of me carrying boxes to my car. Real classy. My parents showed up to help but mostly just stood around making everything worse. Mom kept saying stuff like, I just don't know where we went wrong with you. And Dad was still texting my brother. At one point he actually smiled at his phone. Guess my brother sent something particularly funny about my life being ruined. The final punch to the gut. The university wouldn't release my transcripts because I had disciplinary actions pending. So, not only was I kicked out, but I couldn't even transfer somewhere else. Oh, and they still expected me to pay for the full semester's tuition. Cool. Jake was the only real friend I had left. He helped me pack until like 3 a.m. Then we just sat on my stripped bed eating vending machine chips and trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. His parents called and offered to let me crash at their place in Portland until I figured things out. They were these super chill doctors who could tell something wasn't adding up about the whole situation. But the worst part, my grandparents, they'd co-signed my student loans, and my parents immediately called them about the expulsion. Instead of hearing my side, they just assumed I'd turned into some kind of drug kingpin. My grandmother actually said, I always worried all that computer stuff would lead you down a dark path. Like, what does coding have to do with drugs? By Thursday night, I was completely out of Stanford. 7 years of dreaming, studying my a-hole off, doing everything right, all gone because my brother couldn't handle being rejected. The funny thing is, and by funny I mean absolutely infuriating, he was doing fine at community college. He could have just accepted that's where he belonged and moved on, but nope, had to make sure I lost my shot too. This part's pretty rough to write about. After getting kicked out of Stanford, I basically had nothing, no college, no money, no place to live, and a family that thought I was Walter White Jr. or something. Thank God for Jake and his parents. They let me crash in their basement in Portland while I tried to figure my life out. Their basement wasn't anything fancy, just this semi-finished space with those weird small windows near the ceiling, and a bed that definitely came from someone's dorm room. But honestly, after everything that happened, it felt like a 5-star hotel. Jake's mom would leave breakfast outside my door every morning, usually just cereal and coffee, but still, it meant a lot. And his dad helped me look for jobs online. Finding work was a nightmare though. Try explaining to employers why you got kicked out of Stanford without sounding like a complete degenerate. I finally landed a job at Walmart, working 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., shifts stocking shelves for $11.50 an hour, which was barely enough to buy gas for my car. This beat-up 2008 Civic I bought off Craigslist for $2,000, all the money I had left from my summer job. But one job wasn't going to cut it. I picked up afternoon shifts doing DoorDash deliveries, and then 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., at this sketchy sports bar called the Penalty Box. The owner paid in cash and didn't ask questions about my background, which was nice, but the place was definitely a front for something illegal. Like, why does a sports bar need 3 safes in the back office? My apartment was actually just a converted pantry in this rundown house I shared with 4 other guys. And when I say pantry, I mean it literally used to store canned goods. It was so small I had to choose between having a twin mattress or a desk, couldn't fit both. I went with the mattress and used my laptop sitting on my bed. One of my roommates, Miguel, was definitely a real drug dealer, ironic, right? But he was actually one of the nicest guys there. He would sometimes share his mom's homemade tamales with me when I was too broke for groceries. The worst part wasn't even the crappy jobs or the tiny room, it was feeling like my whole future was just gone. I'd scroll through LinkedIn and see my old Stanford classmates posting about their internships at Google and Facebook while I was trying to figure out if I could afford both ramen and toilet paper that week. Jake would call to check on me, but eventually, I started dodging his calls because it hurt too much to hear about how great everything was going at school. My parents tried calling a few times too, but only to tell me what a disappointment I was, and how my brother was thriving at community college. Like, wow, good for him for managing to pass basic English while I'm living in a literal closet because of his lies. They even had the nerve to ask if I was clean yet. I blocked their numbers after that. The only thing that kept me sane was coding. Between shifts, I'd go to this 24-hour diner called Dots that had free Wi-Fi, would buy their cheapest coffee, $1.50, and just sit there for hours working on random programming projects. The overnight waitress, Linda, was this older lady who'd sometimes accidentally bring me extra fries or a slice of pie that was going to be thrown out anyway. She never said anything, but I think she could tell how broke I was. Dots became like my second home. It was quiet at night, nobody bothered me, and I could pretend I was still a real CS student instead of a college dropout working 3 dead-end jobs. I built this inventory management system for fun, just to keep my skills sharp. Looking back, that project actually ended up changing my life, but I'll get to that in the next part. Some nights were really dark though, like sitting in your car crying after a 12-hour shift dark. I remember this one time I was doing DoorDash and delivered to this house that looked exactly like my parents' place. The dad who answered the door even looked kind of like my dad. I had a full breakdown in their driveway and probably scared the love out of them. Rock bottom was probably around month 4 of this lifestyle. I got sick, like really sick, with some kind of flu but couldn't afford to miss work. I ended up passing out during my Walmart shift. The manager actually drove me to urgent care himself. Shout out to Dave, you were a real one. The doctor said I had a 103-degree fever and was severely dehydrated. I still went to my bar shift that night because I needed the money for rent. The crazy thing is, my brother was living his best life during all this. Found out through mutual friends that he'd tell people I was away at rehab or working through some issues. He even took over my old room at our parents' house and sold most of my stuff that I'd left behind. Used the money to buy a PlayStation 5 apparently. Alright, so remember that inventory management system I was building at Dot's Diner just to keep myself from going crazy? That actually turned out to be my ticket out of rock bottom. But let me back up a bit. So, I'm sitting at my usual booth at like 1 a.m., running on my 3rd cup of $1.50 coffee, when this guy in a suit walks in, kind of weird for Dots at that hour. The place was usually just truckers and other insomniacs like me. He sits at the counter and starts chatting with Linda, the awesome waitress who kept accidentally giving me free food. I'm half listening while coding, and I hear him complaining about how his real estate office's software is complete garbage. They were losing listings, double booking viewings, all kinds of chaos. Linda, who'd seen me coding there for months, actually speaks up and goes, "You should talk to my friend over there, he's some kind of computer genius." I was not a computer genius, lol, just a Stanford dropout with insomnia and free Wi-Fi. But this guy Mark comes over and asks what I'm working on. I show him the inventory system I built for fun, honestly just to keep track of what food Dots was throwing out. I was trying to help Linda reduce waste. He gets all excited and asks if I could build something similar for real estate. Next thing I know, I'm picking up some freelance work from his company. Maintaining their systems was only like $20 an hour at first, but that was nearly double what Walmart paid. Plus, I could do it between my other jobs. Mark kept finding more stuff for me to do, fixing their website, building a better tracking system for property listings, that kind of thing. About 6 months in, I'd automated like half their office processes. They were saving so much time and money that Mark offered me a full-time position as their IT guy. The salary was an amazing $45,000, but it came with health insurance and an actual desk in an actual office, no more pantry bedroom. Here's where it gets interesting. Being around real estate all day, I started picking up on how everything worked. I'd overhear the agents talking about deals, see how they handled clients, all that stuff. One day, an agent called in sick when she was supposed to show a house. Mark was freaking out because it was some big shot client. I offered to do it since I knew the property's details from the system I'd built. Total fake it till you make it moment. I watched like 5 YouTube videos about showing houses on my way there, but somehow it worked. The clients actually liked that I could tell them about the house's electrical system and point out potential IT upgrade opportunities. They ended up buying the place. Mark called me into his office the next day, and I thought I was going to get fired for overstepping. Instead, he offered to sponsor me to get my real estate license, said my tech background gave me a unique angle. I could talk to all these Silicon Valley types moving to Portland in their language. Studying for the license was rough. I was still working full-time plus taking classes at night, but compared to living in a pantry and working 3 jobs, it was a piece of cake. I got my license in 4 months, started as a junior agent, made exactly 2 sales my first month, and thought I was hot love. But then something clicked. I realized I could combine my tech knowledge with real estate in a way nobody else was doing. I built a website that tracked market trends and could predict which neighborhoods were about to boom based on things like new tech company offices and coffee shop openings. I started focusing on helping tech workers relocate to Portland. My first year as a full agent, I made $88,200. Not bad, but nothing crazy. Year 2, $145,000. Year 3, $285,000. Turns out, all those hours crying in my car while doing DoorDash actually taught me something about hustling. The real breakthrough came when I landed this huge account helping a tech company relocate their entire engineering department from San Francisco to Portland. We're talking 50-plus houses, all high-end purchases. The commission on that deal alone was more than 4 years of my old salary combined. Now I'm the youngest senior manager in the company's history, did $1.8 million in sales last quarter alone, bought my own house in this nice neighborhood, where my neighbors are all doctors and lawyers, even got a German shepherd named Pseudo. Yes, I'm still a massive nerd. You should hear him bark when I say, "Pseudo, speak." The crazy part, I actually make more money now than I probably would have with a Stanford CS degree. Sometimes I check LinkedIn and see my old classmates stuck in coding jobs they hate while I'm over here, working 30-hour weeks and making bank. Oh, and remember Linda from Dots? I still go there for coffee sometimes, but now I leave $100 tips. I helped pay for her daughter's wedding dress last year. She still tries to give me free pie though, LOL. So, here's where the story catches up to the present day, and honestly, I'm still processing all of this. Last Sunday, I'm out in my backyard grilling some steaks and playing fetch with Pseudo, still the best dog ever, even if my girlfriend says teaching him to respond to Linux commands is peak nerd behavior. It's this perfect Portland afternoon, sunny but not too hot, got some music playing, just chilling with my dog. Then, Pseudo starts going crazy, barking at the front of the house. Now, he's usually pretty chill with delivery people and neighbors, so I knew something was up. I walk around to check, and there's this black Mercedes parked in my driveway. For a second, I think maybe it's a client. I get a lot of tech exec types these days. But then the doors open, and yeah, it's my parents. I haven't seen them in 7 years. Mom looks like she aged about 20 years, and Dad's got this weird attempt at a beard that makes him look like a bargain bin Walter White. They're just standing there, staring at me like they've seen a ghost. The first thing out of my mom's mouth, "Your house is bigger than we expected." Not hello, not "we missed you," not even "sorry for believing your brother's love and ruining your life." Nope, just passive-aggressive commentary about my house. Classic mom. But then I notice their faces, like really notice them. They look broken. Mom's wearing no makeup, which never happens, and Dad's hands are shaking. That's when I knew something was seriously wrong. They tell me my brother wrapped his car around a tree leaving some club in Vegas 3 weeks ago, died on impact. Apparently, he'd been working as a social media consultant out there, which probably means he was one of those club promoter guys who get paid to bring hot girls to parties. Honestly, tracks with his personality. Here's the really messed up part. They weren't just there to tell me about my brother, they came to apologize. Turns out, my old roommate Jake, who's like a coding wizard at Google now, ran into my mom at some tech conference in Seattle last month. He didn't know my brother had died yet, but basically told them everything. Showed them all the evidence he'd saved from back then. Screenshots of my brother's fake Instagram accounts, records of the money he paid those students to lie, even security camera footage from our dorm showing some guy who looked suspiciously like my brother going into our room the day before the drugs were found. Jake had been collecting this stuff for years, hoping someday it would help clear my name. According to my parents, and honestly, I'm still not sure I believe this, my brother had convinced them I was this evil genius who'd stolen his research project to get into Stanford. Remember how he barely passed high school science? Yeah, apparently, he told them he'd been working on some revolutionary AI project in secret, and I'd somehow hacked his computer and stolen it. They claimed they had no idea about the drug setup, said they really thought I was dealing because my brother showed them evidence, probably those same fake screenshots he was sending around campus. Mom started crying, saying they'd spent years thinking they'd failed as parents because their son was a drug dealer, only to find out their other son was actually the monster the whole time. They're telling me this, and Pseudo is just sitting there giving them the most judgmental dog look ever, like he knew these were the people who screwed me over. Good boy. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to scream at them about how they should have known better, like, they raised me for 18 years, did they really think their straight-A, never even drank Red Bull son suddenly turned into Pablo Escobar? But another part of me just felt empty. They kept talking about how proud they were of what I'd accomplished despite everything. Dad actually tried to take credit, saying the adversity they put me through made me stronger. I literally laughed in his face, told him that's like pushing someone off a cliff and then congratulating them for learning to fly on the way down. Then they started in with this whole thing about how they've lost one son and don't want to lose another, how they want to be part of my life again, meet my girlfriend, maybe even be grandparents someday. Mom noticed a photo of me and my girlfriend on the wall and started crying about how she looks like such a nice girl. She's a pediatric surgeon, by the way out of my league. I just couldn't. I told them they needed to leave. They tried to argue, but Pseudo started growling, seriously, best dog ever, and they finally got the hint. As they were leaving, Mom turned back and said, "We really didn't know about the drugs, we just believed him because he was our son too. And that's what's really messing with my head now. Like maybe they really were just victims of my brother's manipulation too." But then I remember how they treated me my whole life, way before the Stanford thing. How nothing I did was ever good enough, how they always took his side. Found out later they got my address from Jake. He ran into them at that conference, and they seemed so devastated about my brother that he felt bad for them. Can't really blame him. Jake's got good parents, probably couldn't imagine parents actually trying to ruin their kid's life. So Reddit, should I forgive them? Update: it's been about 2 weeks since my parents showed up at my door with the news about my brother, and honestly, everything's gotten even more complicated. They came back yesterday, just showed up again unannounced while I was on a work call. Thank God for Ring cameras. This time, they brought a whole box of evidence. Old photos, my brother's journal entries. Stuff they thought would somehow make everything better, like showing me pictures of family vacations from 15 years ago, would erase the fact that they helped destroy my life. I didn't even go downstairs to let them in, just watched them on the Ring camera while Pseudo barked his head off. Finally called the cops when they wouldn't leave. Watching my dad try to explain to 2 police officers why they were just trying to reconnect with their son was both sad and hilarious. One of the cops actually asked if I wanted to press harassment charges, but I just wanted them gone. Here's the thing that's really been messing with my head. After they left, I called Jake to basically yell at him for giving them my address. But he told me something that made me stop mid-rant. When he first ran into my parents at that tech conference, they genuinely didn't know I wasn't a drug dealer, like they were still telling people their son was lost to addiction or whatever. Jake said when he showed them all the evidence he'd saved about my brother's setup, they looked destroyed, like their whole world was falling apart. Apparently, my mom threw up in a conference center bathroom after seeing proof that my brother had paid those students to lie about buying drugs from me. But here's my problem: even if they really didn't know about the drug setup, which I am still not 100% sure about, they still 1. Never believed in me my whole life, 2. Always took my brother's side no matter what, 3. Didn't try to contact me for 7 years, 4. Only care now because their favorite child is dead. My therapist, yeah, I got one. Turns out getting betrayed by your whole family leaves some issues. Says I need to separate 2 things: forgiving them for believing the drug allegations, and forgiving them for being shitty parents in general. She might have a point. I've been thinking about all the times they chose my brother over me, way before Stanford, when he broke my science fair project in 6th grade and they said I shouldn't have made him jealous, when they spent my college fund on his 3rd attempt at starting a business, it was a drop-shipping scam, when they skipped my high school graduation because my brother had a hangover and needed them. Every single time they celebrated his C+ grades while ignoring my straight A's. The more I think about it, the more I realize the Stanford incident wasn't the cause of our problems, it was just the final symptom of their toxic favoritism. I called my grandparents yesterday, first time in years. They apologized for believing the drug stuff, said they should have known better, but they also dropped another bomb. Apparently, my brother had been lying to our whole extended family for years, telling them I was sending him threatening messages and trying to sabotage his life. He even showed them fake texts as proof. Guy was playing the long game with his manipulation. My girlfriend thinks I should at least hear my parents out, says everyone deserves a second chance. Easy for her to say though. Her parents paid for med school and actually love her. Jake agrees with her, but Jake also believes in humanity and love because his parents aren't psychos. But you know what really sealed the deal for me? I found out they only started looking for me after they found my brother's journal. He wrote this whole confession about everything he did to me, probably when he was drunk or feeling guilty or whatever. They didn't try to find me because they missed me, or because they figured out the truth on their own. They only came looking because their dead golden child told them to. So, I've made my decision. I'm filing for a restraining order tomorrow. Already talked to a lawyer about it. 7 years of no contact followed by showing up repeatedly at my house uninvited should be enough for at least a temporary order. I know some people will think I'm being harsh, but here's the thing. I've spent 7 years building a life without them. Got an awesome career, amazing girlfriend, best dog ever. Pseudo just brought me his ball while I'm typing this. LOL, solid friends. Why would I want to add toxic people back into that mix just because they finally realized they backed the wrong son? Yeah, maybe they really didn't know about the drugs, maybe my brother manipulated them too, but they were crap parents long before that, and finding out their favorite kid was a liar doesn't automatically make them good parents now. Final update. Well, this seems like a good place to end this saga. Thanks for all the support, Reddit. Writing this all out actually helped me process a lot of stuff. Special shout out to Linda at Dot's Diner for all those expired pies, Miguel and his amazing food truck. Still the best tacos in Portland. Jake for being the best friend anyone could ask for, my girlfriend for dealing with my trauma and my Linux command-trained dog, my therapist who's going to earn her whole year's salary just from tomorrow's session, and Pseudo, the goodest boy who knows bad parents when he smells them.